In the heat of Madison Square Garden in 1967, two titans stepped onto the mat. One was Joe Louis, the undefeated powerhouse of American karate. The other, Chuck Norris, a quiet but relentless technician with everything to prove. What followed wasn't just a match. It was a savage fight that sent shockwaves through the martial arts world.
The thing is, again, is that the more you train, the more proficient you are to be able to handle certain situations on the street. But that does not mean that every situation you're going to be able to handle yourself.
Chuck Norris's victory over Joe Louis didn't just upend a champion. It exposed a fault line in the foundation of karate itself. When the dust settled, karate in America would never be the same. This was the moment it changed forever. By the mid-1960s, America's karate boom was in full swing. Once seen as an obscure Eastern discipline, karate was gaining traction through military exposure, Hollywood fascination, and growing interest in Eastern philosophy. But it wasn't philosophy that drew crowds. It was fighting. Tournaments quickly became battlegrounds for the best martial artists in the country. The American tournament scene was dominated by aggressive full-contact bouts. These weren't ceremonial katas or stage demonstrations. They were real fights with real consequences. Fighters trained hard, competed harder, and built reputations through grit and skill. In this atmosphere, Joe Louis emerged as the face of American karate. A former Marine, explosive athlete, and virtually unstoppable force in competition. At the same time, Chuck Norris was quietly climbing the ranks. Known for his calm demeanor and clean technique, Norris wasn't the loudest or flashiest, but he was consistent. He trained obsessively in Korean Tang Soo Do, honed his timing with surgical precision, and began making waves by defeating respected names in the circuit. While Louis racked up titles and headlines, Norris was building a resume that included opening karate schools, teaching celebrities, and compiling an increasingly impressive win record. The convergence of these two forces was inevitable. Karate in the U.S. was moving fast, techniques were evolving, schools were expanding, and competitors were starting to push past the traditional boundaries of the art. Tournament karate was no longer a mirror of its Eastern roots. It was becoming something uniquely American. And right at the tipping point in the summer of 1967, the All-American Karate Championship at Madison Square Garden was announced. It was more than just another tournament. It was a proving ground. Everyone knew the real story wasn't the event itself. It was the potential showdown between Chuck Norris and Joe Louis. One man represented power, dominance, and the old guard. The other represented speed, precision, and something new. No one knew it yet, but this singular confrontation would become the moment karate as America knew it would change forever. Joe Louis wasn't just another fighter. He was the fighter. By 1967, his name struck immediate recognition in martial arts circles, and for good reason. A former Marine with a physique more suited to boxing than point karate, Louis brought raw power and unmatched aggression into a sport still finding its identity in the United States. In many ways, he was its first true American-born superstar. Louis began training in Okinawa during his military service in the early 1960s, studying Shorin Ryu karate under some of the most respected Okinawan masters. But unlike many traditionalists, Louis didn't leave the art in its classical form. He wanted to fight. He wanted to test techniques under real pressure, with real contact. Upon returning to the U.S., he entered karate tournaments with a mindset entirely different from the norm. Fast, direct, explosive, it worked. Louis exploded onto the scene, winning virtually every tournament he entered. At 6 feet 0 inches and over 195 pounds of muscle, he moved like a middleweight but hit like a heavyweight. His specialty was overwhelming opponents with powerful blitzes and precise strikes. While other fighters used wide traditional stances and conservative tactics, Louis closed the distance fast and hit even faster. He won the first U.S. Nationals in 1966, took multiple regional titles, and held an undefeated record that seemed almost untouchable. But what really set him apart wasn't just his power or his results. It was his aura. Louis represented American martial arts confidence. He gave interviews. He predicted outcomes. He had a swagger that matched his skill. To many, he was not only the best, he was the future of karate itself. Critics whispered about the rough edges of his style or his disdain for strict tradition, but fans loved him. Students emulated him. Schools taught like him. By 1967, Louis entered the All-American Karate Championship at Madison Square Garden as the heavy favorite. Nobody expected him to lose. What they didn't expect was a savage fight that would shake that reputation to its core. Standing in the opposite corner was Chuck Norris, a man who had studied every move Lewis had ever made and who had waited patiently for this exact moment. In 1967, Chuck Norris was not yet the action hero the world would come to know. What he was undeniably was a disciplined fighter on a steep upward climb through the American karate ranks. While Joe Louis was the explosive star everyone watched, Norris was the technician everyone underestimated. Norris's journey began years earlier during his service in the U.S. Air Force, where he was stationed in South Korea. It was there he encountered Tang Soo Do, a Korean martial art with powerful strikes and rigorous discipline. Norris trained obsessively, earning black belts in Tang Soo Do and later in other styles, including Shodokan and Taekwondo. Unlike Lewis, Norris didn't rely on sheer physicality. He built his style around timing, precision, and adaptability. By the mid-1960s, Norris was already winning regional tournaments. But his name didn't carry the same media weight as Lewis. Norris wasn't brash or flamboyant. He didn't talk trash or predict knockouts. He let his fighting speak. Every victory was another step forward. Every opponent was another problem to solve. His approach was methodical. Norris studied footage of his competitors, broke down their habits, and trained to exploit their weaknesses. He practiced relentlessly, often isolating specific techniques and repeating them thousands of times until they became second nature. His attention to detail and tireless work ethic made him a dangerous opponent, especially against fighters who underestimated him. Outside the ring, Norris was quietly expanding his influence. He opened a chain of karate schools across California, attracting both serious students and Hollywood celebrities. At the time, Norris was still just a fighter with something to prove, hungry, technical, and fiercely determined. In 1967, he entered two major tournaments that would define his competitive legacy. First, he won the Tournament of Champions, defeating 7 skilled fighters in a single event. Then came the big one, the All-American Karate Championship at Madison Square Garden, the most prestigious venue in the country and the tournament where Joe Louis was expected to dominate once again. Norris was ready. He'd been preparing not just for the tournament, but for Joe Louis specifically. He saw the flaws in Louis's aggression, the openings left when he lunged, the timing gaps between his combinations. Norris had a plan and the skill to execute it. He advanced through the bracket methodically, defeating every opponent in front of him with efficiency. While others focused on spectacle, Norris focused on the goal, reach and beat Joe Louis. Few believed he could do it. Madison Square Garden was packed. Hundreds of fighters and thousands of spectators filled the arena. Most attendees expected Louis to walk through the bracket. He was bigger, stronger, and had an undefeated aura. Norris, while respected, wasn't yet considered in the same tier by casual observers, but those paying attention knew this matchup could shift everything. The tournament followed a single elimination format. Points were scored through clean, decisive strikes judged by a panel. Unlike full-contact knockouts, the format required precision, control, and tactical mastery. Fighters needed to hit hard but within control, stay defensively sharp, and read their opponent's rhythm. Louis advanced as expected, dispatching opponents with speed and dominance. But something was different. His victories weren't as effortless as usual. Competitors had started adjusting. Norris, on the other hand, cut through his side of the bracket with surgical precision. He used timing and footwork to neutralize faster opponents and conserved energy throughout. His strikes weren't always flashy, but they were clean. By the end of the day, the final was clear. Chuck Norris versus Joe Louis. The crowd knew they were about to witness something different. This was the collision of two schools of thought: power versus precision, aggression versus strategy, old champion versus rising threat. The mats were cleared. The judges took their places. The air was still. Then the bell rang, and the savage fight began. When the final match began, most spectators still believed Joe Louis would walk away with another title. But Norris had studied him too well. What unfolded was not a cautious technical match. It was a savage fight that shocked everyone watching and, in its intensity, rewrote the future of competitive karate. The first exchange was a test of nerves. Louis advanced quickly, using his signature aggressive style. He charged to establish dominance early. Norris didn't retreat. He sidestepped, countering with a clean ridge hand that caught Louis mid-step. First point to Norris. That set the tone. Norris stayed mobile, used lateral movement, and kept Louis off balance. Timing made the difference. Norris didn't block, he interrupted. He timed Lewis's attacks to land his own just before Lewis could complete his combinations, outscoring the power fighter by milliseconds. As the fight progressed, it turned physical. Lewis, frustrated by Norris's evasions and counters, began fighting harder. Some said too hard. When he connected, it was with such power that Norris could barely deflect. In return, Norris unleashed a flurry of techniques, including moves rarely seen. Every time he struck Lewis, the crowd gasped. Both fighters exchanged fierce strikes. Lewis landed several powerful body shots, earning points, but Norris kept answering back, scoring with precision kicks and high-speed counters. Judges struggled to keep up. Norris's ability to disguise attacks, especially his front leg roundhouse and back fist combo, began to wear Lewis down. The final exchange was brutal. Lewis lunged, aiming to knock Norris off his base. Norris parried, pivoted inside, and delivered a lightning-fast punch to Lewis, followed by a controlled hook kick, stopping just short of full contact but scoring cleanly. The bell rang. The announcer declared the winner, Chuck Norris. It wasn't just a win, it was a seismic upset. Lewis, the undefeated champion, had been outscored and outmaneuvered. Norris fought hard and smart, turning every strength Lewis had into a weakness. It was calculated brutality. The crowd knew they had witnessed a shift in the martial arts landscape. What made this fight savage wasn't wild violence. It was psychological warfare, the precision under pressure, the willingness of both men to push each other past their limits. Norris absorbed hits that would have dropped most fighters. Lewis fought with everything he had and still couldn't stop him. In the aftermath, Lewis showed sportsmanship but knew the game had changed. Norris had exposed the limitations of brute force in tournament karate. The fight demonstrated that control, timing, and adaptability could dethrone power. It wasn't just a match, it was a moment. The result sent an immediate shockwave through the martial arts world. Lewis's defeat wasn't just the fall of a champion. It was a signal that the old rules were being rewritten. Overnight, the spotlight shifted. Norris's victory became a turning point that fundamentally changed karate forever. Martial arts schools across the country took notice. Up to that point, many instructors emphasized tradition, fixed stances, linear attacks, and predictable combinations. But Norris demonstrated the power of adaptive fighting, the ability to move, pivot, and respond in real time. Fighters started training differently. Schools updated sparring formats. Tournaments began rewarding tactical timing as much as power or aggression. Even more significant was the psychological impact. Lewis had been seen as unbeatable, the embodiment of strength and dominance. When Norris beat him, it broke that narrative. Fighters across the country realized victory didn't belong to the strongest, it belonged to the smartest. Joe Louis, to his credit, didn't fade away. He later became a pioneer in full-contact karate and kickboxing, but he acknowledged the sport had changed. That one fight reshaped the hierarchy. The dynamic between raw power and strategic control became central to serious martial artists' training. Chuck Norris's reputation exploded. No longer just a promising competitor, he became a legend in the making. He opened more schools, trained elite fighters, and drew Hollywood's attention, thanks in part to students like Steve McQueen. The ripples of that single match reached far beyond the ring. It became a reference point in martial arts history. Instructors would say, "Remember when Norris beat Lewis?" To make a point about technique over strength, fighters studied the match to understand timing, control, and how to win against the odds. The fallout wasn't the destruction of martial arts, but a transformation. Karate would never be the same. Until Norris's victory, most tournament champions relied on sheer force, size, or speed. Lewis had mastered that formula. But Norris dismantled that model with timing, angles, and counter-striking. This exposed a gap in the traditional approach. Fighters and coaches realized raw power could be neutralized by calculated movement and precise strikes. The ripple effect was immediate. Schools emphasized agility, spatial awareness, and point control over brute strength. Norris's style became the blueprint for modern American karate, a hybrid of discipline and adaptability. Norris didn't win because he was stronger than Lewis. It wasn't about muscles, it was about being smart. That shifted the focus of sparring nationwide. Fighters studied opponents' tendencies, developed counter-responses, and trained specifically for tournament conditions. Karate became about reading your opponent and exploiting moments. From dojos to tournament floors, students learned to fight smart. This strategic shift elevated competition. Martial artists were no longer just fighters, they were tacticians. The fight took place in Madison Square Garden under bright lights and in front of a large audience. It proved karate could be more than a niche activity. It could be a spectator sport. The intensity and drama helped capture mainstream interest, giving karate a serious, technical, and competitive identity. For many young martial artists, it became a defining moment. Norris's disciplined approach combined with calm under pressure inspired a generation. He proved that success didn't require flamboyance or aggression, just preparation and execution. His victory also opened doors beyond the dojo. Within a few years, Norris would transition into acting, bringing martial arts to the big screen and fueling a pop culture movement in the 1970s and 1980s. The 1967 fight between Norris and Lewis became the dividing line between two eras of American karate, before and after. The legacy it left shaped both men's careers and the direction of martial arts for decades. Norris became the face of technical, disciplined karate in America, while Lewis continued innovating and became one of the founding fathers of American kickboxing. Together, their contrasting but complementary styles forced martial artists to consider new dimensions of competition. Strength versus technique, aggression versus patience, instinct versus discipline. They didn't just fight each other, they defined an era. Their legendary bout at Madison Square Garden is still cited today, not just for its outcome, but for what it symbolized, a shift from tradition to innovation. Over 50 years later, its lessons still resonate. Modern competitive karate, with its blend of technique, athleticism, and mental discipline, owes much of its evolution to that single day in 1967. Do you think the Chuck Norris and Joe Louis fight changed karate in the Western world? Can you think of any other fights with surprising outcomes? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.